to the Homesteading School, where every house is a homestead. Hi, I'm Alexis Marshman and this is the Homesteading School. Today I wanted to just do an introductory video to tell you guys about who I am and why I think I can tell you about Homesteading School. We kind of live on the edge of a big river valley and it's just north of the Tropic of Capricorn, so it is really hot and wet in the wet season and really dry in the dry season, which is our winter here. Mainly farm heritage Percy Island goats, and there's a whole story behind that which it will be linked onto our other website for the farm, telling all about the Percy Island goats and where they come from and how we actually got them, which is quite the story. We call them our pirate goats. We have chickens for eggs, and we have turkeys as well, which we are currently rotating in these little portable pens that we push around the farm. We have a Veggie Patch, which kind of extends for about 800 square meters of our block. We live on quite a steep sloping hill, so we farm like in terraces mostly. Also, we have a fairly large food forest on the 3 acres. We've integrated a lot of permaculture design into the way that we grow our food. We also have 3 dogs. They're quite interesting dogs. We've got Eliza, she's a dachshund. We've got Raina, who's a Maremma, and we've got Jeffy Bear, who is our new German Shepherd puppy, who I'm in the process of training right now. Yeah. Anyway, so how did I come to be here starting a podcast about homesteading and a homesteading school? Long story. I was filling this out today and I was like, this is gonna take forever. But I think my timing's not too bad by the looks of things at the moment. So 3 days later. As my husband will tell you, I am a fond lover of long stories, and you may come to know that as you get to know me. We have lived on this farm since 2011, so calculation, I don't know how many years that is. That'd be 10 years, eh? I think it's like over 10 years. I should have written that in my notes. But there was a bit of a journey even before we moved here. So we used to live in town in a small 800 square meter house block, and we had our first child Morgan, and our daughter Odessa was just born. And I started having these weird dreams and stuff like that. That sounds probably crazy to most people, but that's just how I roll. I feel like spiritually that was really stirring me up to really look into what was going on in the world. Maybe it was just like new mumhood or something, but it really did provoke me to start looking for, looking around the world around me and sort of questioning, the state of affairs and what was going on. And at the same time, I really felt like I needed to get our kids back out of town and move out into the bush somewhere out far away. That was in 2010, so we moved out here and sort of started our journey homesteading. So at the time I remember being really perplexed about what it took to homestead, what it took to live on the land. I tell everyone this story. My first real insight into my lack of knowledge was the fact that I didn't know how to make butter, which sounds probably pretty stupid to most people. The thing was, I grew up on a cattle property since I was 4.5 years old. It was a 360,000 acre cattle property, and if that's farm life, then that's farm life, you'd think. So, and it really formed me as a person. I learned a lot of skills in that lifestyle, that life there. I learned how to ride horses, I learned how to muster and brand and, all of the harder side of life around living on the land. And yeah, that really informed me. It made me tough. It made me really appreciate community and how valuable it was knowing your neighbours. And also hospitality. I learned a lot about hospitality growing up out in the bush. One of the challenges I found growing up was being a girl. And I think it's probably pretty typical of most, bush people. But I have three brothers, Sean. I have three brothers and one sister. I'm second eldest. But growing up, a lot of this more skilly sort of things that we were learning, like my brothers would often do because, they were stronger than me. And another factor was like, we used to do mustering out in the top country, which was like a few hours away from the homestead. And they used to have to camp out in this like hut with all the men. And it probably wasn't an appropriate place for a young girl to be, but I think in that place I sort of missed out a lot of those skills of, just around that sort of thing. And, when it came to branding and, dehorning and that sort of stuff, I didn't really get my hands on doing that because my eldest brother Jon was there, or my dad was there, to castrate and a lot of those kind of grosser jobs. And I'm probably glad that I didn't have to do that. But at the same time, I think I felt, just really challenged around whether I had the skills to do it. So the other thing too was, that I grew up sort of with the expectation of helping around the house. And that was okay. Like, I was really happy to help Mum, and I learned a lot about cleaning. My mum had a Veggie Patch, but my mum's Canadian. So once again, like I said, the climate is fairly challenging in this region, and growing a Veggie Patch was a challenge as it was, but then having horses that like to jump over the yard fence and like trample it to death. Now as an adult and having grown some of my own gardens, I can really sympathise with my mum's heartache of all that hard work she'd put in, and then the horses would just come and trample it to death overnight. So coming back to now, modern day me, 2011, moved onto this property, 3-acre property, 2 small children, and soon to have another one on the way. I started growing my own food, and I had my own Veggie Patch. As you can see, I was heavily pregnant with our third child, Samson, and the Veggie Patch was like right at the bottom of the hill, and I had to walk down there to get to it. And while it was okay to start with, it really failed in the long term because it just wasn't in a place where it was convenient for me to get to regularly. And that ties into sort of my next phase of where I was at. This idea that, like I've got written here, I was always afraid. I was always so terrified to try things, and my lack of experience, and my lack of knowledge, and my lack of skills, and it just was so paralyzing all the time. And I had also this riding sense of urgency to help to provide for my family, to have these skill sets that I could, teach them, like grow enough food so that we could survive if we needed to. Sounds dramatic, but that's how I felt. And about 2013, we went away on a holiday, and I don't know if you guys ever get this, but you get these points in your life where you feel like you're at the precipice of a different journey or a change in a fork in the road, I guess. And at an op shop down there, I love op shopping. This is an op shop dress, by the way. I came across this book called From Eternity to Here by Frank Viola. I'm not sure if that's how I say his name. And it's a Christian book, but in it, basically, he talks about, this idea that God has a purpose on this earth that's beside just people going to church and being religious. It's God has his own purpose, and that purpose is for him to, bring like this heavenly realm and connection with him back to earth. It was about bringing beauty and function to the world around me, to not only for my own life, but for the people around me. So I sort of grew this idea to set up a cafe and beautiful gardens and stuff on our piece of land. I had met this guy called Luke Matthews. He was a permaculture instructor down at our local ag centre, and he also did site analysis and site designs, and I wanted his advice on the property to see if he could help me solve some of my problems. I called him up, and I'll never forget what he said to me. He said, I could come there and charge you a set fee for me to come and, tell you all the information for your own place, but really in order to learn, what you need to do is you need to be connected, and you need to be involved in a wider community and connected to a wider community. Like, this can't be just me and my own ideas for my own piece of land. It has to be connected to a bigger purpose. And so I did a 2-day permaculture course with Luke. It's a design science, and so for me that's just like perfect. I love beauty, and I love patterns, and I love art, and I love design, and I love science. And to me, it just made complete sense. It took the language of our world, all the patterns that we see every day, and it basically taught you how to read it. So I decided to start a community garden, as you do. So I was like, let's do it. And so a whole group of us like-minded people, I don't even know where everyone came from the community, got together, and we put together this permaculture garden basically, and we grew lots of food, and we were connected together, and we had lots of great ideas, and we formed this seed of an idea of what community could look like if it was working together and growing food. And we just had so much fun, and it was such an exciting time because of the people I was meeting more than anything else. My husband and I, Phil and I, had started developing this idea for a whole nother project, this idea of a community hub. Basically, we had traveled a lot before we got married, and all like through Europe and stuff, and drank lots of really, really nice coffee and ate lots of nice pastry. So we were just like, what happens if we start our own cafe? Yeah, great idea. No. This opportunity came up to buy this property in the middle of Serena, which was perfect for all these ideas that were brewing away in our mind. At the time, had this, as we were developing this, because we didn't actually start the cafe straight away. It was like a year or something. But we came across this book called The Great Good Place by Ray Oldenburg. In every traditional community, and this is what we really had seen when we were traveling overseas in Europe and stuff, and I think we didn't know it at the time, but it was what we were craving, is this type of thing. And the thing that I'm talking about is these special places in communities where everyone goes together. There's usually food, there's usually stimulating conversation and stimulating drinks and other things, but in this case, coffee. So they could have been the village square, they could have been the little local tavern, they could have been a local pub. There's lots of different places that this thing occurred in cultures all around the world. There's this idea that there's these 3 places in society then. There's the home, and then there's the work, and then there's this third space, which is the one I was describing. So we had this idea based on this book to create this third space to facilitate all these activities we're doing in our local community. And we ended up calling it Third Ground Coffee House. And at this coffee house, our mission was to connect people with each other and with good food and good coffee. Basically, we opened the cafe in 2015, and by the 19th of April 2016, I've just basically had a mental breakdown. And we'd been running the cafe, been really successful, but it was just all too much. And we basically just had to ask ourselves the question, is this really what we wanted to do? And basically the answer was no, it's not exactly what we wanted to do. We wanted to drink good coffee but not run a cafe. But at the same time, we learn a lot about learning to let go of these ideas that we thought they should be, but they weren't exactly how they're meant to be. In that process, while I was really questioning, myself and what I wanted to do, I just didn't have a passion for anything, and I didn't want to be on the farm. I just was like, ugh. But this thought occurred to me. It was this truth that I really do believe in teaching people how to grow food. So that was something that sort of started as a seed. I had this idea that instead of putting myself back out there in the world, that I really needed to take all these skills that I'd learned and start really practicing them on our own house, in our own homestead. And so this idea of living out this practical reality and art, and calling of working and developing my home and turning it into something productive and beautiful for my family, that was something that I really believed in as well. And I somewhere along the line came across this book by Shannon Hayes, which I absolutely love. She basically says that if every person returned back to their home and made it a home and lived out of it like a home and made it productive, you could basically solve all the world's problems. In the beginning of 2020, I decided to sort of take a step back. Once again, I was at this fork in the road to have a think about what my role was in the project, Third Ground project. Little did I know that COVID was going to happen. What it basically taught me at the end of that year was that there's no time like the present, and an online homesteading school was going to be a really good way for people to be able to stay connected and learn whilst maybe not being able to see each other. So, which leads me to what is homesteading? So I think for Australians, we think homesteading is like an American thing, but if you think about it, we come from a heritage of homesteaders. I mean, they were convict homesteaders, but they were homesteaders. Like, they built farms and they started properties and developed the land and went all over the place. So really, we do have homesteaders in our blood. So the definition of homesteading is homesteading. Homesteading is a lifestyle of self-sufficiency. It is characterized by subsistence agriculture. I don't like the word subsistence. It sounds like bad. I don't feel like I'm living subsistently. But anyway, home preservation of food, and may also involve the small-scale production of textiles, clothing, and craft work for the household use or sale. So the idea is that homesteading needs to rely on these 9 forms of capital, and every month over the year for 9 months, I want to focus down on one of those forms of capital and delve right into it. I want to chat to an expert about that topic. I want to chat to some locals about stuff around that. I want to give you guys some tutorials on some of the tools that you might use to help you with that topic. And yeah, basically build on our knowledge over the year. So this month we're starting with emotional and spiritual capital. This is going to be a bit of a different month because I'll have to be jamming not only the introduction and showing you guys all what's the Homesteading School framework looks like, but also, the subject itself. So if you're still a bit confused, I'm sorry, this is my first time doing this. I hope that this is all going to pull together, and I hope that you're patient with me as I work through this process of learning how to podcast and YouTube and all the rest of it. Finally, yeah, I guess that's kind of it. I've kind of showed you all the things that I wanted to talk about today. I love it if you had any comments or ideas or thoughts, put them in the chat. I hope that this all makes sense. I'm sure I will get better at this, and hope that you guys have a good week and enjoy the content that I put up. Yep. So thanks a lot. See you guys, and we will talk to you again soon. Bye.